Welcome to another Right Now series segment, where we address some of your most pressing concerns with the English course essays. This segment is all about how to include dialogue for the personal narrative. Anyone can describe a personal experience in their narrative that took place, but adding dialogue makes a story interesting because it breaks up the detail and gives the reader a more realistic experience of what really happened. Take this picture of the young couple here. We can see that they're eating, and we might assume that the woman is slightly uncomfortable, but why? That's where dialogue comes in, because dialogue can help you establish backstory, reveal important story details, and can move your story along quicker. So, how and when do you include dialogue? Well, anytime really, but it's best not to include too much dialogue because you also need some detail. Before you begin writing your story, try writing down a few memorable quotes that you can remember from your experience. And what if you can't remember what was said exactly? Well, have you ever relayed a story or listened to someone else relay a story and the details change over time? The details of a story change over time due to our, as we learned in PACA, neuroplasticity and our tendency to remap and look for ways to make a story more interesting or even recall a memory of an event. It's okay to dramatize if you can't remember something exactly or if you want to intensify a memory, but try to retain as much of the memory as possible, as authenticity is important. Now to talk about the how. There are several rules for putting in dialogue into your narrative. I'm going to provide the ones that should be observed most often, starting with the first. Number one, use quotes when you begin and end dialogue. I began to notice a change in Alberto's behavior as soon as I mentioned that donuts were not a part of anyone's balanced breakfast, to which he replied, "No, no, no, you've got it wrong, man. Donuts are the balance." Notice how I don't put new quotes after every sentence? That's because you don't need to when you have one long, steady stream of dialogue from one speaker. Rule number two, use speaker tags when you are writing a story. It's sometimes hard for your reader to figure out who's talking, so the easiest way to identify that is by using speaker tags. These could be tags like he said, or she replied, or they asked, either before or after you insert your dialogue. It sure beats guessing. "Break me out of here," John said. "Okay," Deborah replied. Rule number three, start a new paragraph when you change speakers. Another device used to help your reader know when you're changing speakers is by starting a new paragraph when you switch. Here's an example that shows this speaker switch. Rule number four, relaying versus quoting. Relaying something is when you are telling your audience what you did. An action, while quoting something, is when you have the word for word dialogue. Here's an example to show the difference. I said that I was going to the store. That is the key word here, and because of it, you're relaying a detail and not a quote. I said, "I'm going to the store." Without that, in this example, you need to quote because you're providing an exact dialogue of what was said. So relay maybe when you want to skip over something not so important, and use dialogue when you want to focus on a moment. And rule number five, quote inside a quote. If you ever want to use a quote inside another quote, here's how you do it. Use single quotes inside the double quote, and then you have a correct quote. Okay. I can see how that's a little confusing, so I'll just show you. Marta smirked at Tavion and said, "Did you hear Tina say, 'Not if I had something to say,' in class the other day?" Using single quotes distinguishes which quote is the main one and which one is a quote that your main one is referencing. Chances are you won't come across this too often, but when you do, this time you'll be ready. That's all for Dialogue in a Nutshell. See you next time.